I'm Justen Faull, and you're watching End Times Productions. Now, let's talk about World War 2.5. It's amazing how much the American government has completely deceived the taxpayer. I mean, they take your money and they lie to you about where it's going. People have really, in recent days, really talked a lot about that. But let's just go back to post-World War II. We're told the Nazis have been completely defeated. Our government brings back a bunch of Nazis, forgives them of their war crimes, and then installs them as high-ranking government officials, gives them money and resources, and gives them new names even, to where they're slightly unrecognizable in some situations, depending on how bad the war crimes were. If their war crimes weren't as bad, they could keep their name. Anyway, there are a lot of interesting things there. The Nazis were down in Antarctica. The powerful Nazis, they had a fortress in the ice, and according to their own declarations, had been in contact with the king of the world. So, we have a very interesting scenario arise known as Operation Highjump. Now, the American government tells the people, they really build this up with a massive public relations, film footage, interviews, TV, just propaganda, that Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, was going to be leading this massive exploration mission with somewhere over 4,000 people from the United States, Britain, and Australia, with a flotilla of 13 ships, whole bunch of airplanes, whole bunch of tools. They tell the people that it's an exploration mission. Here's the only problem. There was not one exploratory ship. Here's the problem. There was not one exploratory ship. Every ship was a warship. Fighter planes, tools for war, not lab technicians, soldiers, military personnel. This was not an exploratory mission. They were going down to the ice to continue World War II. They were going down to the ice to try to finish what was started in Nazi Germany and defeat the last bastion of Nazis. But the problem was, they got down there and the Nazis now had perfected the technologies. And when they got down there, you have stories, personal accounts of UFOs, Nazi UFOs, not alien ships, Nazi UFOs coming up from out of the ice, out of the Arctic waters, and literally firing technology that we didn't know about. It was laser technology. Nowadays, we have laser technology where you can literally, with a laser flame, cut through steel. You can see videos on YouTube. There's people who that's what they do for a living. Back then, they didn't have that technology. The Nazis had technology with these flying saucers that were literally cutting ships in half. Our planes, Admiral Byrd was getting our planes shot down by Nazi technology that they did not have in Nazi Germany. That's why I call it World War 2.5. Operation Highjump was not an exploratory mission. It was a war. They went down there, they got their butts handed to them, and interestingly, some of the ships were completely removed from the registry after the fact, which tells us those ships were fully destroyed by technology that they could not bring back and explain to the people what had happened. Now, the USS Pine Island was one of those ships. Now, after the film got released, there were some naysayers that were accusing us by saying, well, you can go visit the Pine Island. You can go take a tour of the ship. You can find retired ships and take tours. Okay, that's the government easily either popping up some other ship and giving it a paint job and calling it the Pine Island, or just creating a whole new replica of it because it disappeared, and it is history. You can validate it was completely removed from the naval registry, as well as a couple of the other ships in the flotilla that later showed back up, but they weren't the same ships. It had to be damage control. But you know what? Damage control, that is the federal government's middle name. And sometimes it's worthy damage control. They do it to protect people. I get it. But at the end of the day, a lie is a lie is a lie. And who is the father of lies but Satan? Now, based on everything that happened down there, Forrestal, James Forrestal, Secretary of Defense, he comes out and really feels obligated to tell the American people what really happened. And it's interesting because he had a secret diary that he called his secret diary, where he documented all of these things that never got released to the public. It was held by the president, and it was held by other high-ranking government officials. He was on record wanting to tell the American people what really happened. He'd recorded it in his secret diary, and all of a sudden he's tossed out of his hospital room. I think it was like the third-story floor of a hospital in Bethesda, Maryland, and they suicided him. James Forrestal. Now, Admiral Byrd, who led the fleet, he comes back. He's completely distraught. He goes to Washington, does a full debriefing, and Admiral Byrd was the most highly decorated admiral in United States history. Matter of fact, since him, there's never been anyone with his credentials, with his decorations. He was an American hero. He still is an American hero. He comes back and he's told basically in Washington, you really just need to just cover this up, keep your mouth shut. He doesn't want to, but he does. He's good. He does what he's told. Again, he was kind of like the Wheaties box poster boy. I mean, Admiral Byrd was all over everything. Matter of fact, he had postage stamps with his face on it. He was one of, I think, 4 Americans who was awarded the ability to wear a medal with his own face on it. The guy is literally, he has gone down in history as the most decorated, most highly respected, not just admiral, but American hero, polar explorer. He was an expert in polar logistics, the first person to explore, according to the American government, to have certain exploratory missions of the North and South Pole. Of course, there's some debate there because the Nazis made it down to Antarctica before him. Anyway, very interesting thing surrounding Admiral Byrd. He's told, you need to be a good employee of the government. We're going to continue to make you the hero, but you got to keep your mouth shut here. Keeps his mouth shut. Now, fast forward. By the way, Operation Highjump took place between 46 and 47. 1952 rolls around. Admiral Byrd goes down to D.C., and he has been really working some of the politicians to submit a bill to Congress to start testing nuclear atomic weapons in Antarctica. You say, well, why would they want to do that? Because he knew there was something there that he felt needed to be nuked. Remember, they got their butts handed to them in Operation Highjump. That war that took place there, that battle that took place, they came back literally with their hats in their hands, tails curled. 52 rolls around, we really need to just start doing our nuclear testing in Antarctica. We need to start dropping these bombs in Antarctica. It's the safest, best place to do it, apparently, according to him. So a bill is getting ready to be introduced to Congress, right? 2 months before the bill gets introduced to Congress, you have the famous 1952 UFOs over D.C. Now, most of us are too young to know anything about this. Matter of fact, my dad would have been far too young to even know about this, but the media covered this. We have full high-resolution scans in the film. We show this. We even have some of the film footage because it was filmed on actual film stock. It's not very sharp, but we cleaned it up for the film. You've got these groups of UFOs over the Capitol. Everyone knew about it back in 1952. You couldn't cover it up. They were literally declaring UFO flying saucers over the Capitol. And what's very interesting about it is that when they called the fighter planes to go shoot them down, by the time the fighter planes got up there, they disappeared. It was as if they just cloaked, or they were so fast that they were able to, in a split second, take off. Now, the planes landed, the UFOs came back. Planes went back up. This happened 3 times. The planes obviously did not have the technology or the speed to be tracking and tracing these UFOs. What's interesting, these were not aliens. These were Nazi UFOs, very likely the same types of UFOs that were responsible for destroying the ships and the planes at Operation Highjump. How do we know they're Nazi UFOs? This is amazing. If you look at the photos, and we compared in the film, they're in the traditional Luftwaffe formation. This was the formation that Nazi fighter planes flew in. It was like a little flock with a point man and back man. It's Luftwaffe, typical Nazi flying patterns. While Admiral Byrd was in the midst of Operation Highjump, he apparently had contact with a Chilean newspaper via some sort of wire communication. And he said that based on some of the things that were going on, that he fears that some of the potential threats that they would be facing in the days to come would be flying craft that could make it from pole to pole in a matter of, minutes, essentially. I don't remember the exact quotation. We have it in the film, but essentially he told the Chilean newspaper that the technology was going to be there for these vehicles, these flying saucers, to be able to go pole to pole really fast, which was unheard of at the time. So you have these UFOs showing up in D.C. 2 months before the bill gets submitted to Congress about nuking Antarctica, essentially. And as soon as the UFO flyover in D.C. took place, and we were clearly not able to stop them, at that point, immediately the bill gets just destroyed. Doesn't go to Congress. However, 10 years after Highjump, now Operation Highjump took place between 46 and 47. The UFOs over D.C. was 1952. 10 years after Operation Highjump, the U.S. government has officially had a year-round presence in Antarctica. Really don't know how to explain that. There are places in Antarctica that you can't go. Matter of fact, I'm told that if you go there, if you're able to go there, and you can, you're very limited on the areas that you're allowed to go to. There's places that are cordoned off. There's places that you'll never be able to go see or explore. Matter of fact, Steve Quayle talked about in our film that the Special Air Services, the British SAS, the British had sent the SAS out to Antarctica. I forget how many years after Highjump, and they basically all but one died in the process. And one of the guys came back, the only survivor. He came back and he said they encountered some type of an entity there. This is weird, but some type of an entity that appeared to be what we would call like a Yeti or an abominable snowman, but it was under some type of remote control. You can do the math and figure out what that means. Was it a biological, lab-created animal hybrid that was controlled? I don't know. There are things going on in Antarctica that we don't fully understand. It's a mysterious place. It's got a history of great mystery. And just a reminder, 1537 Perry Reese map showed it without ice. All we know, when we hear Antarctica, the first thing you think of is ice. You've got the North Pole and you've got the South Pole. So, very fascinating things. Admiral Byrd, when this diary surfaced, claiming to be that of Admiral Byrd, it really has drawn a lot of interest worldwide. And whenever there's something of that great interest with such fantastic claims that defy logic, there's always going to be people who are going to bring criticism against it. And that's healthy criticism. I think as a researcher, we need to always be open to healthy criticism. Allow someone to challenge something that you say, because without challenging something, you really can't get down to understanding, first of all, why you believe what you believe, and also, is there a reality to what you believe? If it's truth, scrutiny should not put fear in your heart. If it's truth, challenging and scrutiny coming against it should not bother you, because you know it's true, or you're confident that it's true. As with Admiral Byrd's diary, his secret diary, you're dealing with a document that claims to be that of Admiral Byrd, and it documents, it's basically a flight log, which they always kept. Flight logs were totally normal. When somebody was going on an exploratory mission, they would keep a flight log of what happened in that mission. There was no difference with Admiral Byrd's diary. Matter of fact, it starts off with a flight log. And it goes into a very incredible, detailed explanation, which he says in the diary was being written after the flight log ended, where he says that he was writing the rest from memory because he had to get out of the plane. You can't keep doing a flight log. The flight log is done in the plane. He's got a radio man. There's just two of them in the plane. And then, according to his testimony, he was taken by what we would only be able to describe as some beautiful looking, pure race, Nordic, Aryan type creatures that he called beautiful men, that took him to have an audience with an entity called the Master. What's interesting is that he's on an exploratory mission of the North Pole. That's what it started out as. Admiral Byrd is basically, he loads the plane and he takes off. And within, approximately a few hours, he's not over ice anymore. He's now looking at a lush valley with waterfalls. And by his own word in the diary, he lowers down, he descends down to get a better look because he thinks he sees an elephant, and he gets down and he sees what he calls a woolly mammoth. Now, this is a place where should be completely iced out. This is a place that should be fully under the ice. It's the North Pole. But within so many hours of flying, he's now taken into another room. He's experiencing another place, and then he loses control of his plane. The controls completely just gyrate out. And then these two UFOs appear on the side of his plane, and they've got swastikas on them, by the way. And let's just say the swastika is not just a Nazi symbol. The swastika is one of the oldest symbols in history. And it's used, the Tibetans use it, Buddhists, Nazis used it, ancient cultures. It's a very popular symbol, and we show that in the film. But these UFOs pretty much create some sort of a force field around his plane, and they let him know, they speak through, they're communicating now through his radio, and they're letting him know that they're going to be taking him down into the North Pole, and he's going to have a meeting with the Master, that the Master requires his presence. So whoever this Master was, he knew who Admiral Byrd was. He'd been keeping tabs on things going on the surface world. This would have been the king of the inner earth, king of the world. Admiral Byrd goes through a series of events to get there, and he records it all by memory. Now, what's fascinating about all this is that the Master entity, again, he's not the Master, but he calls himself the Master. He appears to Admiral Byrd as a very ancient old man with years etched on his face. That's the terminology Byrd used, with years etched on his face. Satan is an angel of light, but he can also shapeshift. And we're told also in one of the epistles of Paul that Satan has ministers that can also transform into angels of light, appearing to be angels of light. And Satan can appear to be an angel of light. So we know that his appearance can change. I believe that Satan took on the appearance to look like an ancient sage, if you will. Maybe someone who's lived for thousands of years and who looks like he's lived for thousands of years. This is further selling his agenda to Admiral Byrd. Because if Admiral Byrd shows up down there and you've got some beautiful 33-year-old looking angelic being, it's not going to have the same weight as this ancient looking sage who could almost present himself as a creator of sorts. Someone who's been around from the creation all the way until now and aged with the creation. Which is interesting because when we go to some other accounts of people who have allegedly gone inside the earth, when they come back out to the surface, time is different. Perception of time is different. Just like they say, if you were to take two twins, load one of them on a plane, he flies to the closest star and comes back to Earth, based on the atomic clock, they're not the same age anymore. So there's something to say about time, time perception, time recording, up in the air, up at the closest star to Earth, and then also down inside the Earth. But Byrd comes back with this amazing story about having this meeting with the Master, and his description of this city and gemstones and crystals, just this beautiful high technology city. It's just emitting, radiating with energy. Inside the Earth, by the way, taken in through the North Pole. It's fascinating. So what we did, for the first time ever, this has actually never been done before. We brought in a voice actor. We hired a voice actor, and we brought him in the studio. We did a dramatized version of Admiral Byrd's diary from the time when it goes from ice to the supernatural stuff. For the sake of everyone's attention span, we did not cover the 3.5 hours of flight log of ice, more ice, ice, more ice, conditions and altitudes. But we go from the beginning of the flight log, we skip ahead to around 10 in the morning, where he starts to see the atmosphere change. And then the weird stuff starts happening. It's dramatized with sound effects. Really, it's amazing. I got to tell you, like, this is one of those things that it's like old time radio. It allows you to experience what the diary would have been if you were actually there, hearing the story from Admiral Byrd himself. Anyway, for the first time ever, we're releasing it in 4K, and we're doing an exclusive release with End Times Productions. And we're also including, as a bonus segment, a little bit of header information on Admiral Byrd before we get into the diary itself. So I'm really excited about that. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to now be able to see the diaries if they were hearing it from Admiral Byrd himself. I'm excited about it. And there's really no better way of checking the diary out. I could tell you about it, but it's much better for you to actually go and watch it yourself, get immersed in the story yourself, and experience it for yourself. For anybody who's interested in checking out the Diary of Admiral Byrd as a standalone, if you're not able to go and watch the full film, definitely check out the link that's been hyperlinked into this video. End Times Productions is going to have it exclusively available, absolutely free for the first time ever in 4K. Go check it out.